IndieMatic is a website for filmmakers that are getting their projects into pre-production. They might want to raise awareness for funding, for getting crew, for getting talent. It's geolocation based, so you can see quite quickly in your area what projects and productions are happening in your area and contact the producers or the filmmakers to get information about what they're up to.
What resources are available on the website which is beneficial to filmmakers in the local area then?
The main reason I did the website was because there are quite a few sites like IMDb and Slated that do a similar thing, but they tend to be fairly choosy, understandably. It sort of struck me that there's not really that many sites that you can quickly just go to and glance at to see what's happening in your area. The main focus is for people like extras, for crew, people interested in funding. It's kind of a place that they can go to and find out what's going on quickly and easily in their area. Most resources like this already out there tend to be subscription-based or pay, you have to pay to list.
What do you think this website offers that other similar film websites lack?
I think the maps are a very useful thing because it geolocates you if you want it to. So you can very quickly, as soon as you arrive at the site, it will show you what's happening in your local area. And then there's quite a nice filter where you can quickly filter through, if you're an extra, you can just tick the box saying looking for cast, or if you're a cameraman and you're looking for productions and you cameramen, you can very quickly just tick a few boxes and it will instantly reduce down the number of searches to the ones that specifically you're looking for.
I think there's a lot of people out there working on projects or looking for projects, but they don't necessarily know what's going on around them, and I think having that is a really good way of people finding the right project for them. So what's been the response for the website so far?
It's been very positive. A lot of people have come back saying they really like the idea. A few people have added their projects already. It'd be nice to get a few more, mainly because obviously the more projects we get on there, the more useful it becomes as a resource for everyone.
And you've been using the website yourself for your own project, which I believe is your first feature film. Could you tell us a little bit about this project?
Yeah, it's a sci-fi adaptation of Shakespeare's Measure for Measure. I'm doing it with local actor Ken Colley, who's from Hyde. Ken and I talk a lot about Shakespeare and things like that anyway, and he has a lot of experience of acting Shakespeare on stage especially. And also he's done Measure for Measure as well for the BBC. So I looked around all the different plays, and the one that really jumped out at me was Measure for Measure, mainly because it deals with religion, sexual politics. It's meant to be a comedy, so there are some humorous bits in there, but as Ken says, it's more a comedy of life. It's quite dark. My initial plan was to modernise it and update it, but the more I got into the lyrical nature of Shakespeare's prose, the more I sort of fell in love with it, and I thought, well, there's no way you can change this. It doesn't make any sense to change this. And as you read about it, you sort of learn that it's not a new story. Shakespeare took old stories and retold them in his own sort of particular way, but it's not an original story. So at that point, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to tell a story, or are you doing Shakespeare? So I thought, well, let's just do Shakespeare. So I've kept the dialogue as it is. There's a big thing at the end of Measure for Measure where there's a marriage proposal, and there's been various interpretations of the reaction to this marriage proposal over the years. There's nothing to say that she shakes her head or nods her head or anything like that. So just she says nothing, she does nothing. And that's quite, that was quite a challenging thing to get your head around, because how do you handle that? It's things like that they've been quite a challenge. One of the big things about Measure for Measure is the whole setup, which is that the city where it's set has sort of fallen to rack and ruin. There's a lot of problems with licentiousness and brothels and all this sort of thing. So to cure this, the Duke, he comes in and he brings Angelo and sentences anyone to death that's getting people pregnant out of wedlock and things like this. And one of the people that falls foul of this is Claudio, and that's how the story starts. And so the story unfolds. And I was sitting there thinking, oh no, how do you can't really modernise this. A few people have tried it. Some people have tried setting it in the 60s, which kind of worked. Some people have tried setting it on an army camp. Again, you kind of get away with it, but it doesn't really wash that well with, sort of contemporary culture is, well, you've got a girlfriend pregnant, so what, So I started thinking, well, how could you make this story so that it was logical that, Angelo would come in and do this and have justification to do it. So I came up with this bizarre concept of setting it on Mars, which is trapped by a force field because of the harsh environment there. So you've kind of got this situation where everyone's come from Earth, the city's full up, there's all these problems going on, and then you kind of make sense of why Angelo would be so draconian. So that's kind of where we ended up with the whole Shakespeare sci-fi mashup.
I'm not familiar with the play myself, but in terms of my personal taste with films, I'm always drawn to films that do leave you with questions at the end. There's that ambiguity, I think, is often quite interesting, because you come out of a film and you think, what have I just seen? Yeah. And then you think about it for the next few hours or the next few days, and it stays with you. And they're the sort of films that you want to go back and watch again, I believe.
Yeah, so. No, I'm the same. I like cerebral films, I guess. The ending does make it more ambiguous, because you're left thinking, what on earth was she thinking? And I think a lot of people, there is a temptation, I think some people have done this, where it's pretty much the last thing in the film, and the Duke proposes. He actually proposes twice, and she doesn't answer either time. But he does it the second time, and there's no response. And then he sort of goes, "Oh, well, let's go off to the party. Let's go off to the palace and have a party." And I think some people have been tempted to leave that bit off and just end it with the marriage proposal. I mean, other people have had a running off in horror. Most people have her accepting.
I think it's an interesting connection, your film, because Ken doing the BBC version, which I presume was a traditional adaptation in the 70s, and then obviously going on to do The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and then you doing a sci-fi adaptation, kind of links them all together.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, that's what I thought. It's quite nice.
You mentioned about Mark Benton as well. I don't think I've ever seen him do that kind of role, because a lot of people know him from Strictly Come Dancing.
Exactly.
What made you see in him that he would be right for the part?
Well, I mean, obviously he's done a few comedic parts, and the part that hopefully he'll play is Lucio. And Lucio's quite an interesting character. He's kind of one of the big comedy elements. That role, especially, needs good comic timing, which, if anybody's watched Early Doors, then Mark's got that.
For my money, it's a great concept. It's Shakespeare. Why is it that a project like this is so difficult to fund?
I think any project's getting more difficult to fund. You have to really have a good story, I think, these days. With the financial crisis, one of the things I've, sort of learnt the hard way over the last few months is, whereas there used to be a lot of corporate money you could tap into, a lot of big corporations would have arts funds. They put 10 or 50,000 aside each year, and you could tap into those kind of things. That's all gone. And also the way that the financial world has moved, and everything's gone much more public, and everything's run by shareholders now rather than having private owners. That side of things has really affected the funding world, and obviously with there's not so much money flowing around anyway. People are watching their budgets. Cost of living is going up, and wages aren't matching it. So I think there was probably a heyday, probably back in the 90s, when money was no object, and and you could probably everyone wanted to be part of the film industry, and there was a lot more money flowing around.
We go. Just tell us where we can find out about IndieMatic and Measure for Measure as well.
Okay, yeah. Well, IndieMatic's IndieMatic.com. IndieMatic.com, and Measure for Measure is M4 movie.co.uk.
And I assume they're both on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Yeah, both on Facebook and Twitter as well. M for Movie and IndieMatic. So.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andy, for your time.
Thank you.